Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. My name is Joe. I'm the founder of OneSource. The way I normally like to do these meetings is just to get to know you a little bit, to hear what you've done for MCAT prep up to this point. That way, I can give you some information about our program as it pertains to you, because we do place a huge emphasis on personalizing the entire process. So, if you don't mind giving me a brief rundown, then we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
So, where are we? Year of 2023. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I briefly started studying the summer of 2020. So about 3 years ago, and I started first through Kaplan books. And I was basically reading through, trying to grab as much information as I can regarding content. I did not take Sociology 101. I
Mhm.
believe that is the only class I have not taken um, that is required regarding like the courses or I mean the content regarding with the MCAT. So sociology
Okay.
is completely new. I was trying to learn going through with the Kaplan books, and I didn't feel as though reading really helped me grab much of the information as I hoped it would. So then I decided to take a class through the Princeton Review that fall, or it was later that within that year decided to do Princeton, and I did a group session, and I thought I gained more insight on how to better graph my content review, and I used their material as well and kept up with their schedule for practice tests. And I thought I was doing well. I started picking up with my score. My diagnostic was, see, the lowest score is a 479. So I think it was around a 486, 488.
Okay.
So it was higher 480s. And with Princeton, I was able to kind of bring it up to around 493, 494 roughly. So it was mid 490s. And I was planning on taking the MCAT winter of 2021, but I ended up pushing it since I wasn't ready and I felt really burnt out. So I decided to push it. And then I took it actually for the first time April of 2022. And I don't remember at the top of my head, but I believe that the final score that I received was a 491 or 492.
Okay.
So I decided to take a step back, and I was already in my first year of my master's during that time. So I decided to finish out the semester of my master's and start fresh that summer, which is what
Okay.
I ended up doing. And my plan was to take it in September. And again, that was pushed to December. And again, I felt as though I was kind of on the edge of burnout like throughout the summer. So I decided to stop and start again in September, start fresh in September and work my way to take it January of 2023. So that was my plan again with a time starting from scratch. This is where I decided to use everything that I had, or like I started then to do next step or blueprint. So I grabbed information through them and tried to study with their content. The content was fine. I went through everything from as far as I was able to. And I also had a one-on-one tutor, but I don't know if it was more because I wasn't able to grasp some of her techniques or what Blueprint wanted her to emphasize, but it just didn't seem to stick well with me, especially with cars. So I always had a weak emphasis in cars, and that was usually my lowest section.
Okay.
And I was trying to figure out what were the strategies used and how to draw parallels of how the writers were emphasizing certain parts of Carr's passages and applying them to those questions and kind of getting an insight or kind of having like a foreshadow of what they're going to ask and why. So that kind of helped me draw more of a skeleton of what was going on. So I finally started getting a grasp on how to apply those methods also with the science passages. But there was still something missing that kept had holding me back with my scores, even though I started receiving more of a trend of like 500 in my practice test, on my practice test towards in December. And I
Okay.
took it again this January 2023 after the blueprint prep, and I ended up receiving a lower score of 489. Or I think I planned it in,
Okay.
yeah, it was in January and I received a 489. So I didn't know what to do after that, since I felt as
Right.
though I grabbed from three different resources regarding content strategies. I also did my own flashcards. The third round I did it, I didn't use anything that was pre-made. The miles down, 1,000, I don't even know, like 3,000 decks. I had everything from my own work, everything from scratch.
Hmm.
And I use that as my guide, since I kind of figured at the beginning I was more of, let's see if I can pull in everything from a little bit of every source without
Yeah. Yeah.
actually making it harder on me. But of course, ended up learning the hard way. That ended up being more beneficial for me to do it on my own. So that's what I
Okay.
ended up doing with the flashcards, and those helped. And I also was able to do more of a, and not intense, but more in-depth review with those flashcards over more common, like more of the high yield material that was following through, especially with the science. But I still was not able to get above a 400 on the real test. And so I don't know what I'm missing with the AMC material that I couldn't really apply there, or if there was something from the third party material that I may already was lacking and couldn't transfer over to the actual MCAT material that AMC offered. And since I've already took the AMC material 2, 3 times for each of their 3, 4 practice tests, I
Hmm.
didn't want to end up like I'm taking those tests again, but if I'm doing them, if I get the correct answers or I receive a higher score, it's not because I have a lingering memory in the back of my mind of a passage that I knew I struggled with before.
Yeah.
It's really of, I actually learned how to apply the concepts that this test is really wanting me to apply in order to get the correct answer. So I decided to finish out my master's, not worry about the MCAT. And I think I was also burnout, since I was always trying. I think that was like my second or third round of actual burnout from this exam.
Yeah.
And I'm very passionate to actually get my crap together with this exam and pull through. So I was trying to figure out through everything and different sources of what would be the next bet. And I ran into one source and I saw through the your mission of how you really like having the tutoring sessions one-on-one. It's very personal. It's more circulated on your own weaks and strengths. That is through carried up however many hours that is best fit for you and who you're working with. And I just felt as though I needed more of someone of a higher stand, like more of a professional standpoint than another student who went through it the same way. It's not um everyone's different. Everyone has their own way of thinking and
Right.
approaching different strategies and how they apply those strategies. So with that student tutor that I have through Blueprint, it didn't work for me. So then I ended up thinking, all right, so now I actually have to have someone who has been known on this on a different level than someone my age, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I see
So
what you're saying.
yeah. So right now I hope to take it this next winter. I'm still on the grind of wanting to take it. I am still determined and I'm willing to do anything that I can to actually get to the score that I believe I can achieve. And I know that I don't deserve, with the work ethic that I put into already, to be in the lower 490s. And
Gotcha.
I know I have the potential and the power to work myself up to a competitive score. And I am out of school. I
Okay.
graduated. All I'm going to do right now is dedicate full time and more to MCAT studying, even if it kills me, well, figuratively. And I will also be working part time to set aside also clinical experience to just have that as a boost on my application when that comes around. So I'm willing to set any time, whatever it is, night, day, well, most likely day, because I can't do it more with my constraints and my migraines. But yeah, I'm willing
Yeah.
to do whatever it is that I can to get there. So
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I really appreciate that thorough breakdown. And I also had pulled up your notes that you had sent in with the original Calendly invite. So I had that as well, but that's way more context. So that's super useful. Um,
yeah, I'm
okay.
sorry I had to cancel. I had a stomach
Oh no,
virus and
no
I'm
worries.
overseas right now and I felt
Oh,
very
okay.
ill, so I couldn't do a
Yeah,
call. So
no,
I
no worries at
apologize.
all. No worries at all. I appreciate you being here for this one. I have
Me too.
they're very hit and miss whenever you put your calendar out on the internet and let people schedule meetings, and a lot of time people don't show up. So
Oh dear.
yeah, so no big deal. But yeah, so I am looking at everything, considering everything here. What is your goal score on this? Like, what would be a score that, if you, obviously not 528, but like if you get the score back, you'll be like, okay, mission accomplished, awesome, I can get into med school with this, or what is that score for you?
5'10", between 5'10",
Okay.
5'15". My sweet spot's 5'12", but at
Okay.
least a 5'10". I'm looking into DO and MD, so I'm totally fine even if it's a 505, or DO seems more applicable for me.
Okay. All right, cool. The reason I ask that is that I just want to get an idea of what you're aiming to accomplish here. So I think you're being realistic about the score you're looking at, which is a good like first step here. It does seem like you have tried a lot of resources in this space. I don't love the Princeton review stuff myself. Blueprint stuff is a little bit better, but I don't know. All I've ever looked at from Blueprint is their practice exams. So I don't know how
Mhm.
good their other resources are, and I haven't even looked at the practice exams that thoroughly, honestly. But what we would do is come up with I want to think about your learning style. Like, do you feel like you learn best from videos or from books or study guides or flashcards? Do you have like any preference on that stuff?
I am very much of a visual learner. So anything that's through videos, I think is beneficial, even one-on-one interaction or just interaction with, if it's with someone that's like in a learning experience or just more of a review, is also beneficial. Um, Reading kind of goes through, it's like listening going one through ear, not the other, but seeing or reading it, it just goes through me. It doesn't stick well.
Okay.
But memorizing, like, I don't know, like chemical formulas or reactions, especially with terminology when it comes to psychology and soc, that's more going to be flashcard based, since it's just going to be you either know it or you don't information.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we would try to come up with some sort of prep process for you that leans heavily on videos and flashcards, practice questions as well. Have you ever used UWorld?
Yes,
Oh,
UWorld,
you
I
have had UWorld.
love.
Okay.
I have had UWorld. I did that for this past exam actually, and I used that. And again, I think I have it again. I have all of like, I kept track of what I did wrong and how many and everything and why I did it. It's all linked on my Google Drive of everything that I did,
Okay.
detailed. And I would say it was more of like around 50% for cars. Science was more leaning between 60 and 70% correct, if I
Okay.
recall correctly.
Okay. Did you do them timed?
Let's see. I At first I did not, and then I slowly transitioned to timed as I started getting closer to the exam.
Okay, that works out. Yeah. So do you still have access to UWorld?
No,
Okay. Okay. Well, if you want to, we talk. How much of it did you use? Did you say it already? I apologize if I missed that.
I don't think I used all of them. I believe, let's see, there were about 2,100 or 1,900 questions. I think I went through, ooh, I know at least half. I think
Okay.
half.
There's a lot more now. So I think we would probably use
Really?
that
They
resource. Yeah.
updated it?
Yeah. Yeah. They have like 31, I think around 3,100 right now. So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
know that AMC uploaded a new exam and I took that once.
Okay. Cool.
So
Nice.
That's
Good to
not
know.
as familiar to me
As the other
as
ones.
like the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We are also getting ready to launch a whole bunch of practice tests that we've been working on that we're trying really hard to make them as much like the AMC as possible so that
Yeah.
they'll actually predict your score rather than giving you like a 472 whenever you should be getting a 500 like like the Princeton review tests do. So yeah, and the blueprint tests and every other third party practice test. That's my
Exactly. Yeah.
primary
Yeah.
goal on this. And then I don't know if you've noticed how like on the AMC stuff on the real test, whenever you went and took the real test, they use a different font than they use on any of the third party practice test
I
stuff
noticed that. Yeah.
and different font than they use in the AMC portal. So we're
I
using,
know it
yeah,
irritated me the first time I saw that and it threw me off.
yeah, that's
And then I
something that,
kept,
yeah, we're making our portal to where it uses the same font as the real MCAT, which
oh, that's
I
nice.
feel like that should be a no brainer. It's like literally Times New
I
Roman
agree.
is the font that they're using. So, but it doesn't make any sense. But so I think that we'll be able to utilize those exams in your prep here as well, just because they will be score controlled with the AAMC. So it'll be a decent way of getting a perspective on where you are in the process. So what I'm kind of thinking right now is if we make a prep plan for you, and I'm just going to keep operating under the assumption that you're working with us instead of having to pre-qualify it with if you decide to work with us every single time. So that's my pre-qualifier for the rest of this. So what we would
That's
do
totally fine.
is we would create a prep plan that involves some of our videos that we've made, plus some of the, I don't know, have you ever heard of the AK lectures?
It's with that one, I don't remember his name, but he's the one that basically has like the whiteboard and writes everything out and then describes through them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I did use some of his, I think
Okay.
more for biochemistry.
Okay,
Yeah.
we could use some of those as well. Have you ever heard of Chad's Prep?
I've heard of him, yes.
Okay, we could maybe look at some of those as well. So what I'm thinking here is compiling like videos from different resources to get the best of each thing because we have videos, but I know that like we're not going to remake videos that Chad has done perfectly or that the AK guy has done
Absolutely.
perfectly already because that's a
Yeah.
waste of time. So we'll compile those resources. Plus, we'll use Anki. What Anki? You said you made your own cards, right?
I did. I made
Okay,
my
yes.
own.
So we'll use some of
And
those.
then yeah, but I don't know if I should also use the ones that I made when as I had incorrect answers through UWorld before. So I don't know how
Mm,
from
yeah,
scratch I should start, if you know what I mean.
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. We'll think about that some because we would want to use your cards if you have them to the extent that you have them. Maybe leave the world ones out though. I don't know. I have
That's
to
fine.
think about that. Um, I'll let. So we have some people at this who work at this company who know Anki a lot better than I do. So I would
Hmm.
defer to them on that. I've never
Yeah.
used Anki in my life. I just like didn't use it whenever I
I'd
was
be
small.
more than happy to share my files too once I get
Okay,
a hold
great.
to my computer if needed. So
Yeah,
just let
yeah,
me
for sure.
know.
Okay, yeah, and I'll show you what all of this looks like here. And I'm going to share my screen here in a minute and show, like, walk you through
Okay.
our whole process. But I'm just thinking out loud right now in terms of what we would
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
end up doing, and then we would definitely want to use UWorld, uh, use our practice tests, and we would also probably have you. We would end up having you redo most of the AAMC stuff again, even though I know you've already done it. But as you get close to the test, it's really nice to go through the AAMC stuff so that you can see get used to thinking through their logic in the way that they present things because it is a little bit different than UWorld. And while we have made all of our practice tests try to duplicate it as closely as possible, it's still a really difficult task to try to make it exactly like
Absolutely.
the AMC. So I think that that would be a really good resource for you as well. So we want to think about a list of resources that is comprehensive yet not redundant. So we won't want to use, like, for instance, I'll never have a student use both the Kaplan books and the Princeton Review books. That doesn't make any sense because those are the same. They have all the same stuff in them and just too many things to get through. And we would also supplement with a few study guides as well that just have a lot of material packed into a more concise format. So those are the resources I'm thinking about. It looks like you have. I think I've got answers to most of the questions that I would ask here. If I think of more, I'll ask you as we go through. But I'm going
Yeah,
to go ahead and share my screen and just walk you through this process. You said you found us through a Google search, right?
I did. Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. So the reason I asked that is these are just my notes that I've been taking. The reason I asked
No
that
worries.
is because sometimes people will have heard about us from a friend or something like that. So I just wanted to know what you know already about us to this
No,
point,
no
so I don't
worries.
bore you too
Yeah,
much.
it was just more of who can I find that is more of a reliable, they know what they're doing, and more
Yeah.
of a professional level than a student. And everyone that I've seen is
Yeah.
more student based or just trash reviews of others. And then I ran into you, and it's more of a recent group. So not a lot of people
Yeah.
know about it. But then the more that I looked into it, and there were a few reviews on Reddit, and
Mhm.
there were nothing but good things. So I was like, okay,
That's
why not
good.
look
I'm
more
glad.
into it?
Yeah.
So, and someone said it helped them a lot and they really saw an improvement in their score, and it
Nice.
seemed like that I should give it a shot. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad to hear
here I
that
am now.
there's good things on the internet about
Oh
us.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, so okay, so anyway, the way that this program works is as soon as you sign up to work with us, you get a folder here in our Google Drive space, or it's Google Workspace. It's like an encrypted version, business version of Google Drive, basically. Same thing though.
Mhm.
You can see how everybody's folder is just their name as the title of
Yeah.
the folder. So as soon as you sign up, you would get a folder that has your name on it sent to you. We usually sends about 30 minutes after sign up.
Mhm.
And so I've got one student here whose folder I've asked her if we can go through all of her stuff as we go through these consultation meetings. So this is Melanie's folder. We will be going through all of Melanie's stuff over the next
Okay.
the next few minutes here. So
No
inside of this
worries.
folder, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of resources. Like for instance, is an equation sheet that I made that just has all the equations and explanations for them for the whole test.
Mhm.
There are probably 1,000 pages of different study guides in here. You won't use all of them. I hope not
Mhm.
anyway, because we'll want to supplement with ones that are actually useful for things that you're struggling with as we move through the process, or things that we feel like would be efficient for you. There are a few that everybody ends up using, but there's also a few in here that nobody ends up using. So none of
Sure.
that's really part of the program. It's really there for reference material. We also have a whole bunch of whiteboard videos in this video files folder. And there's some open source textbooks in here too that you probably won't ever use. But this is just a whole bunch of resources for MCAT prep. You can also create your own folders in here. You can see this one's Melanie's folder that she made.
Mhm.
Just to save anything that would be relevant for MCAT. It's just a really easy way for us to share files back and forth. So
That's
the
nice.
where the program itself actually starts, though, is around this MCAT syllabus file. So if we look at that, the MCAT syllabus file looks like this on the inside. And I can zoom in on this if if you want, but it's got goals
Yeah,
for each week
sorry if my
in it. Oh
forehead
yeah,
is
no
just
worries. I
like
just want
beaming
you to
on
be able
my
to see
phone.
like, oh no, you're totally fine. I
Yeah.
just want you to be able to see as much. So you can see how there's like goals for each week, as well as goals for
Yeah.
every day of the week in here. The
Mm.
So we have goals for the week, and we will throughout the process be updating this constantly. So this, whenever you first get this file, it'll be basically blank when you first get it, and then the first meeting that you have with your tutor is dedicated to building this file out. uh, we come up, the first thing we do is scroll down to the bottom and enter in like when your actual MCAT date is going to be, so you can see here the real MCAT date. And then from there, we schedule out when you're going to take each of your full-length exams, when to finish the AMC section bank, when to finish UWorld, when to finish certain third-party exams, all of that, as well as when to finish certain aspects of content review. So here we're just putting in major milestones from your test date, working backward to present day. And then once we get up to
Mm.
present day, we will think about some of the resources that I just mentioned and what a really good jumping off point would be based on your perceived understanding of the stuff right now. And
Mm.
usually that involves starting pretty heavy on gen chem and physics, just because those topics underlie the biology stuff, so that if you get better at gen chem, you're also going to get better at ochem. And if you get better at ochem, you're also going to get better at biology stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's really the way we move through content with people. With you, we might start implementing UWorld early because you've already been through a lot of the stuff a few times. So it could
Mhm.
be helpful to start with practice questions from the get-go while you're in content review phase. Or if you prefer to go through all the content once before you start on UWorld, then you can do that as well. So we can adapt it for whatever you think is going to work best for you and what we think is going to work best for you. And so that's why this is a dialogue. It's why we don't just send you a syllabus and say, hey, go do this. We're going to
Of
actually talk
course.
through it
Yep,
with you
yep, yep, yep.
and set it up to go at the pace that makes sense for you. So uh, we only build out in extreme detail for like a week or two at a time as we move through this, because we'll want to keep updating it for you, so that if there is a week where we gave you too much stuff to do, didn't get done with all of it, then we can build in a catch-up day on, maybe Monday or Sunday of
Mhm.
the next week, and then make it a little bit lighter that next week, or come up with ways to make you more efficient if we feel like the amount that you did while while we assign too much, the amount you did wasn't enough to ever get through this stuff, then sometimes we'll just like say, yeah, while you didn't get through all of that, the issue isn't that we gave you too much stuff. Sometimes it's just that we need to make you more efficient because there is a certain pace that you do need to have in order to get through all this. I don't
Of course.
anticipate that being an
Yep,
issue
yep.
with you because you have your full-time MCAT right now, but
Mhm.
it can be sometimes for people. So
Of
there's
course.
just something to
Yep,
think
yep,
about.
yep.
And so we just update the schedule with you periodically as we move through the process. This will usually be at the end of at the end of every single meeting. But if you go, like, say you have to cancel a meeting at some point for something, and we don't have anything in the schedule past that date, past the meeting date, because frequently we'll update it just like up to the meeting, and then that way at the end of the meeting we can assess and see how you did on everything in the meeting, and then build out the next week from there.
Hmm.
So then you can always just text us and be like, hey, can't make the meeting today, is there any way you can update the syllabus? And we'll be like, yes, thank you. Or if we say no, then
Hmm.
you text me and I'll make somebody do it. But
Yeah.
because you'll have everybody's contact info too through this. But anyway, so that's kind of how the scheduling process works here. Generally speaking, we go content, practice questions, AAMC stuff, but we can
Yeah.
bleed those together as much as we need to throughout the process. So
Hmm.
any questions on that before I show you what we do in the actual meetings?
Nope, we're good.
All right, cool. So let me pull the notes back up. So in the actual meetings, we always start out by just asking you what questions you have from any of the stuff that you've been going over recently. This is just like some
Hmm.
units analysis stuff I did with somebody the other day. And then we will from your questions, we'll use that as a jumping off point to go over whatever you need to go over. The questions will usually, I would think, be over the stuff that you're supposed to review, but they can be over whatever you want them to be over, because everybody who works for us is scored a 525 or better on the MCAT.
Hmm.
And so they're all good to talk about like anything at any given time. Uh, the reason that we start from your questions isn't so that we can abdicate responsibility of building a lesson plan or anything like that. It's so that we can actually make sure that whatever we're talking about is going to be relevant for you. This is born of my time
Hmm.
teaching for Kaplan. I taught the Kaplan, Kaplan's like giant live online course that they have where there's like 1,000
Yeah.
people in there. I taught that for 4 years before I started this company. And whenever I was doing that, I learned that that is the worst way to do things because everybody needs to move through stuff at at their own personal pace. So there'd always be like a quarter of the class that was too far behind to get anything out of what we were talking about because they hadn't gotten done with the homework, and then another quarter of the class
Hmm.
that was so far ahead they didn't care either. So it just didn't work very well. So that's why I wanted to start from your questions, and then obviously if you have no questions, we'll have things prepared that we can go over as well. But
Yeah.
it's good to start from there so that we can figure out what you know and don't know, and then that way, like for instance, if we're supposed to be going over kidney stuff, but I ask you what aldosterone does, and you tell me that it acts on the distal convoluted tubule to reabsorb sodium in exchange for potassium, and that regulates blood volume, and it's regulated by juxtaglomerular cells releasing renin, cleaving and you tell me all of that, then we're not going to draw this whole thing because that's just such a
Right.
giant waste of your time. But if you know nothing, then we might end up drawing this. So that's just an example. We all use these artist pen displays. So I drew this out like in real time with a student. Everybody in our company has one of these. They're just good
Hmm.
for making production value of this stuff relatively decent. Sometimes we'll paste in, especially as you get deeper into the process, we'll paste in a bunch of practice questions as well to show
Yeah.
you how we would move through passages. And well, this is sometimes people will just send screenshots. This is from somebody's phone that she wanted to talk about this pathway. We'll paste in a bunch of passages
My goodness.
and
That's way
questions
too
from
in
the
depth for
passage.
that, but all right.
Do what? Oh yeah, that pathway.
I was like, that's way too in depth for a
I
tyro
know.
tyrosine kinase.
People ask me some obscure questions
I
sometimes,
bet.
but
I
yeah.
bet.
But anyway, it's fun to try to answer them sometimes. Sometimes it's unnecessary though. But you can
That's
see how
good.
we'll paste in the passages and give you passage approach strategies and paste in questions and give you question approach strategies. We'll initially start out by just showing you how we would move through the passage because everybody who works here is pretty good at this stuff. And so you can just gain some strategies from that alone. But then we'll also have
Hmm.
you show us how you're moving through them as you get better at implementing our strategies. And that way we can critique your approach and say, hey, you're doing this right, but this thing, like, why didn't you pay attention to that picture at all whenever you're reading through the
Hmm.
passage? Because 5 of the 6 questions were based on this image.
Basic. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so things like that. Um, so any questions on all of that, like what we do in the actual meetings?
yeah. No, it all sounds great.
Okay, perfect. So then the last thing that I need to show you here is what we do after the meetings are over. So at the ends of the meetings, we will come back over here to your folder, and we'll upload all
Mhm.
those notes that I was just showing you into this notes from our
Mhm.
discussions folder. This is just so that you don't have to worry about taking notes during the meeting. You can just be totally present for the discussion, asking questions and giving answers to questions we ask you. And then you can come back in here and look at the notes later if you do want to use that for part of your review process. I would
Mhm.
say that we do have some students who use these really heavily for their review, but I would say most people don't use them at all. So it's totally up to you on whether you actually want to take advantage of these notes, but they are there. Um, I think the main reason that people don't use the notes at all is because we also record all of our meetings, and we have a
Oh,
guy
just
who's our
yeah.
in-house video editor. That's Mike here,
Mhm.
and Mike edits all of these at the ends of the day and uploads them to your uploads them to your student folder here. He basically just makes sure the production value is high, that there aren't any audio issues, there aren't any like our faces right in the middle of the screen and can't see the whiteboard. So he just fixes all of that stuff because Zoom likes to script the format of things.
Of
And then he
course. Yep.
also uploads them to a unlisted YouTube playlist for you. So these are all those same videos. You would just have your own private YouTube playlist
Um,
where nobody else can see the playlist. Like if you look at our YouTube channel right now, it looks like we have like 30 videos on there. In reality, we have like
mhm.
10,000 videos because they're all in these
That's
like private
insane.
unlisted playlists. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
that ends up,
awesome.
yeah, it ends up being really useful for people because you can watch it back at 2x or whatever you want as you're going through the
Mhm.
process. And then, and I've actually found recently that students who rewatch their videos tend to do a little bit better than students who don't. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that whenever you're watching a video to learn something, it's usually not made specifically for you. But if you are in the video and it was a one-on-one teaching meeting that was literally like tailored for you, then it just tends to be a little bit more effective to review
I
things that
believe
way.
it. I
Yeah.
believe it.
And then
And they're each,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, go for it. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna ask, based on where you listed off those notes and the videos, are they
Mhm.
going to be labeled the same thing? So then I don't have to go back and forth and trying to see which notes were matched with which lecture.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can also like all of the notes will also be in the videos too. So
Oh, good
let's
point.
just yeah,
Yeah.
like we can grab this one. It looks like I did this meeting, I think. Yeah, that's me in my old house. So you can see how like all the notes are actually in the video too. So that if you did want to relook at the notes while you're going through the video, they're literally just like right there on the screen for you. But
Oh, okay. So it's literally tailored through like you're going through it again.
yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly. It's yeah, exactly how the meeting looked as you were going through it the first time. So oops, I just deleted that. Well, whatever. You saw it. So and then the last part of this that I need to show you is how we keep track of all the hours. You since you found us through Google Ads, I don't know if you've been on our main website or not.
I have.
Oh, you
Yep.
have been on the main website. Okay, cool. So if you've looked at the prices and stuff, you'll have seen that everything's priced based on time you spend working with the tutor.
Hmm.
The and so we keep really close tabs on that for that reason, just because that's very important for everybody. So everybody inside their student folder here has an hour tracking sheet. So this is the hour tracking sheet. It's just located right here. And at the end of
Hmm.
each meeting, we'll come in here and we will enter the date of the meeting in this column right here, as well as the
Hmm.
total number of minutes spent in that meeting in this column. And you can see how that's pretty variable just based on whatever you needed to go over that day. Melanie's meetings are longer. Melanie just likes to talk a lot. Most people end up with around 90 minutes as their average meeting, but you can see she has some here that are like, like 2.5 hours. You can make 2.5 hour meetings happen if you want. That's up to you. I'm personally not a fan of 2.5 hour meetings, but whatever. It's your preference. I had a 4 hour meeting with somebody the other day, which was ridiculous, but
Oh
uh
God.
but anyway, so the meetings are just as long as they need to be to convey the ideas that you're trying to cover in those meetings. And then in this column, we always enter the number of the minutes from that meeting that we view as being billable. And so to us,
Gotcha.
what billable means is time spent actually efficiently studying for the MCAT or efficiently going over MCAT stuff, not time spent talking about whatever you did last weekend or Donald Trump getting
Sure.
arrested or aliens being covered up by the government or any of that stuff, like just MCAT,
Yeah.
because we're not experts on any of that other garbage. So we're not going to
It's
charge you
just
more
MCAT.
for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then this column shows you whatever the percentage of each meeting that was billable. So it's it's just like this column divided by this column times 100.
Mhm.
And then this column here shows you the total number of hours you start out with. So you can see the Melanie started with 40 hours. And then it just counts down over the course of time from the billable hours column. So you can see how much time you have left. So that if you do
Yeah.
end up at the end of the process, if you have a whole bunch of hours left, then you might want to stack meetings up in the final week, or you might just want to save those hours and apply them toward admissions advising, because you're allowed to do that if you end up with too many hours.
Oh,
Or
that's
if,
neat. Okay.
yeah, and we can talk about all of that too. Like what happens if you have too many or too few hours. We have good solutions for both options. Um, and then if you do want to rewatch one of the meetings, this column always says like what you did during that meeting, and this will have the exact same name as the YouTube video will.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't used to, so for Melanie's they might not, because you can see this was like last November. This is a little bit older, but the newer stuff is a little bit better than the
Mm-hmm.
old stuff. But if you do want to rewatch the video, then you can just find the video you want to watch and then click on the link right here next to it, and it will literally like open that video up for you and allow you to watch it that way. This is a boring one.
Oh,
They're just going
wonderful.
over practice tests, but this just gives you some indication of what it looks like.
Yeah.
So anyway, any questions from there?
Um, are we sticking with for all of those, like for example, for all those 40 hours, is it under that one tutor consistently?
That's a really good question. So by default, yes. However, there can be some situations in which that doesn't happen. So some of
Yeah.
the time, like you noticed that Melanie had, I just showed you one meeting with Simona and one meeting with me. I think she also had a couple other meetings with a few other people at different times. She ended up, I think she ended up using way more than 40 hours. I think that she had a different hour tracking sheet for the other one or something. But anyway, she the reason that can't happen sometimes, there's a bunch of different circumstances where it can happen. The simplest one is just your schedule and your tutor schedule don't line up for a week, and so we're having somebody cover a meeting.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
definitely do
Yeah.
that. uh or you can just say, I'd rather just meet with my same person because we build rapport over time and they learn how I learn and I've learned how they teach. And that's why they're by default, you stay with the same tutor. There can also be a circumstance where maybe you're having a really hard time with, let's say, like electricity. I don't know. I just saw
Mm-hmm.
the word electricity here. That's why I picked that. So, and your tutor's having a hard time teaching it to you. You love each other otherwise, but electricity, you're just not on the same page. Then we can have somebody else come in who is really good at
Literally not
teaching
on the
that one
same current.
concept.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate the dad jokes. Um, yeah, but we could have somebody else come in and just have one meeting with you on that topic.
Okay.
Who is maybe that happens a lot for cars. We have cars is like the hardest thing to teach. It's also the hardest thing to get better at, and we have a couple people who are particularly really good at that. And so a lot of times they'll travel around and do one-off meetings to go over car strategy with people who are kind of stuck on cars. Every now and then I'll just randomly do a meeting too. I'll just say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I haven't talked to you since you signed up. Do you want to do a meeting just so I can see where you are and so I can offer some additional perspectives? So that can happen. And then there's also the option to, if you decide you don't like your tutor for any reason at all, it could be a real reason, like my tutor is not a good teacher, not prepared for meetings. If that's ever the case, please let me know. But if you
Mm-hmm.
just, or it can be a fake reason, like my tutor wears like a blue shirt and I hate people who do that. Then either one of those situations, you just have to text me or email, whatever you prefer, and say, hey, I would like to swap tutors. I'll always ask why, but I'll also always get you set up with a new tutor like same day or next day. 24
Mm-hmm.
hours is maximum turnaround time on that, because we want to make sure that, like, sometimes somebody can be really good at teaching something and just doesn't quite vibe with somebody else. And so we want to make sure that you're always paired up with somebody who's actually going to be the best option for you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you tell me about it and I'll always go review the meetings, especially if there's a legitimate complaint and it's not just like I wanted a male tutor or I wanted a female tutor or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and if I agree with you on the complaint, like if I agree the tutor didn't seem prepared or they didn't do a good job teaching, then I'll refund the time you spent working with that person, because I don't want any stuff that we do to be bad, because we're a small, like we're a relatively small company still. And if
Of
we
course.
don't do
Yeah.
everything way better than everybody else, then we will fail. So
Of
I'm,
course. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. So that's how that works. I don't know if that answers your question thoroughly.
No, it makes complete
Okay.
sense.
All right, cool.
So how often do they, especially for cars, do students tend to want perspectives from others, kind of just to get more of an idea on how they should go about a passage?
It
Or
happens somewhat frequently with cars because almost everybody is going to cap out somewhere on cars. Like
yeah,
very, very, very rare does a person get all the way to 132 on cars. It's harder to get 132 on cars than any section, just statistically speaking. 99th percentile is lower for cars.
of
So
course. Yeah,
uh
yeah.
yeah, so it happens with some degree of frequency. I can't say whether it's probably less. I would say it's less than 50% of the time, but and sometimes it won't be that anybody is asked. Their tutor will just be like, "Hey, can we get somebody else to like give
I
additional
was just
perspective
going to
on this?"
ask you too,
Yeah,
if you also step in and say maybe this approach from this tutor will give you more or a clearer picture
yeah,
of what I mean on this, you
yeah,
know?
for sure. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
wonderful. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Almost inevitably, it's almost inevitable that you'll meet with multiple people to go over cars at some point, just because different people we also have a lot of tutors who are naturally really good at cars, and just because I mean, by virtue of only hiring people who've scored 525, you're gonna have a lot of that. Like we have one
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
who
yeah.
reads all the passages in 10 seconds. He takes 10 seconds to read the cars passages. He said he finished every AAMC exam with 45 minutes left on cars. And I'm just like, that's not fair. Like that's
Can I
ridiculous.
have that? Can you share some of
Yeah,
that
can he
maybe?
just like
Like
hand that out? Yeah, I
a
wish.
little bit.
If we could figure out how to give that away, then we would have all the money.
Just
But
all the wild cards layout.
yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyway, so he is not one of the cars experts because he is so good at that I don't have him teach cars to anybody just because he
Hmm.
doesn't have any strategies on cars.
I understand.
Um, but and so like we'll try to match you up with somebody who has the same sort of situation. And since that's the section you've identified as the most difficult to you, I'll try to get you somebody who is one of the people who I would have migrate around to teach cars because they can teach
Mhm.
everything else too.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Also, yeah, chem. Actually, yeah, cars is my weakest, and then chemistry, like the first section, the first science pack section is my strongest actually because of Gen Chem. I'm very strong in chemistry.
Okay, cool.
Physics is my weak point.
Okay.
I can't
We'll
do
write that down.
physics is my weak point with that. Um, Biology and biochemistry is a hit or miss. More with biology. I'm more proficient with biochemistry than biology, is because I don't know genetics. I've not taken genetics. I've not taken microbiology, which again is a huge chunk of the high yield material. Um, but I know a lot of the DNA and genetic coding that's tied between biology and biochemistry, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, a lot of the organ systems I'm good on. Of course, I need to review.
right.
Psychology and sociology. My bachelor's is in psychology, so I'm decent with psychology. It's just more of tying the concepts with sociology with the passage.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah.
a hit or miss.
Yeah, and I think a
So
lot of the
that's
car
kind of
strategies will help with that too. So,
That's what I was going to say
yeah.
too. Cars is just going to be an underline for sociology and psych because that's where more of
Mm,
the experimental factors, because they're making psych and soc more cars dense now. Of course, you
yeah,
probably know that now.
yeah.
So,
I spend a lot of time with all this with
yep,
all
yep,
this
yep,
stuff.
yep.
Yeah. Especially as we're getting ready to launch these practice tests. Yeah, I think about this a lot right now. So, yeah. In fact,
What?
actually, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Mhm.
What were you gonna say?
No, go ahead. It was just going to go off kind of more on the tutoring hours, but you can finish your thought. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say one of the things that has forced me to spend a ton of time with that too is when we made our MCAT AI, that I spent a lot of time figuring out like what exactly is on the MCAT to make that. Have you seen the MCAT AI thing that we have on the website? You may not have seen it. I don't think anybody.
I, I don't know how it's used, but I know that it exists.
Okay, yeah. So have you used ChatGPT before?
Yes,
Okay, this is just like that. It's got GPT-4. GPT-4 is the algorithm underlying all of it. So it's,
that's
which is like the
amazing.
paid version of GPT. But then we took it and we fine-tuned it using the AAMC document that they release each year. It's like 100 pages long that says basically what's on the MCAT.
Yes.
We used
My
that.
lovely. Yes.
So this has access to that, but then it also has, we gave it access to 5,000 hours of our tutoring videos too. And
That's
so
awesome.
it knows everything about the MCAT. So you can have it like ask you MCAT questions or write passages for you or literally anything.
That's
And
amazing.
it's pretty cool. So like if you just give it, and you can ask silly stuff too. Like, well, here's the sample question I have in here. So you can say, what are the differences between alternative splicing and polycistronic mRNA? But then you can also say, please give me an answer that rhymes in the style of, I don't know, like Eminem or somebody like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I spelled
Or
Eminem.
like in the song format, and it'll be easier for you too. That's so smart.
But and I mean, this is kind of silly, like this is me just trolling a little bit, but
But no, that's smart. If you like have it in a way that you know you're gonna remember it, it's just gonna click even better.
yeah. So here you go. Here's your rap. I don't know. I can zoom in on it too if you can't see that.
Let's
Oh,
tell
sorry.
you here's a rhyme to help you learn.
So anyway.
Oh my god, I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I just finished. Yeah, that's silly. But anyway, I don't always recommend like doing the rhyming thing with it, obviously, but I do recommend having it up while you're studying, because then if you run into something, like if you run into alternative splicing and you're like, well, how is that different from polycistronic mRNA? Then you can just ask it that and it'll tell you everything. It'll be like alternative splicing happens in eukaryotes. It's where you get like multiple start points on the same mRNA, where versus polycistronic would be one mRNA for a lot of
One,
different genes. So yeah.
because of its shape, so it's circular. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a lot of students tell me that they started using this like all day, every day now to study, because they'll just constantly look stuff up in it. So I just think this is a really useful thing to have on board. But anyway,
That's awesome.
and then you can also ask it
Okay.
like if you need to know something for the MCAT. So like the other day I was in a meeting with a student and one of our tutors who was training, and the tutor brought up E1 and E2 reactions, and the student said they didn't think those were on the MCAT because they're not in the Kaplan books. And I kind of agreed. And so we just looked it up in this MCAT AI, and it said, while low yield, E1 and E2 reactions are technically fair game according to the AMC PDF that they made. So yeah.
Mm,
Anyway, so that's just like ways that you can use that.
that's awesome.
But
Basically, your 24/7 tutor. That's awesome.
yeah, it's really convenient for questions. And you also have all of our phone numbers and everything, so you can text us too
Hmm.
if you have questions that this thing's not doing a good job with.
So since we were entering in September, uh, so it depends on me on when I would want to start, or could I tell you I want to start right away?
Yeah.
Here's my plan. See who I would match up best with and go
Mm-hmm.
from there, basically. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have a really quick turnaround on that. It's always a 24-hour turnaround time when from the time you sign up, you'll be paired with a tutor within 24 hours. So yeah,
Okay.
pretty quick.
I just
But
also wasn't sure between if I'm willing to take it in January, doesn't matter the date, but then it depends on me how often I would want to meet with the tutor weekly. And then that also follows through of hours, right? Or do you have a recommendation for me of where I could, um, where a good happy medium would be, where considering of my current circumstances?
yeah, for sure. So meeting is as far as meeting with a tutor, most people will do that about twice a week throughout their process.
Okay.
There might be some weeks where you don't need 2 meetings in the week and you might just opt for one, and there might be some weeks where you want 3 instead. I think more than
Sure.
three works really well, but if you did 3 a week the entire time, it would just get it just gets pretty expensive. It adds up that way.
I
So
understand.
I think the best bang for your buck is like 2 meetings a week most of the time, and then with the option to stack them more if you need to in some particular weeks.
Okay.
For that reason, most people our most commonly purchased plan is the 40-hour plan, because if you
Mhm.
look at, like from now until January, if you spread those 40 hours out, that comes out to be about like 2 to 2.5 hours a week,
A
which
week.
is
Okay.
roughly 2 meetings a week, especially given the way that we bill hours, like we'll bill
Yes.
we'll never build more than 95% of a given meeting. Most of the time it's like between 85 and 90.
So then how would it be if I need more hours
Yeah,
than
good
what I
question.
already paid for?
So I'm just going to go to the plans and pricing site so you can
That's
see what
fine.
I'm talking about. But uh so the way that that works is that if you do need more hours, let's just say, for example, that you bought the 30-hour plan instead of the 40-hour plan, and then you end up
Mhm.
needing 10 more hours, just for instance. Um, if that were to happen, then what we would do is we would scroll down here and be like, okay, what's the hourly rate of the 40-hour plan? Because you'd be at 40 hours at that point, right? Like if you had 30 and then you add 10 more on, you're at 40. So we're going to charge you the hourly rate of the 40-hour plan for those 10 more hours. Yeah, so we're going to be really reasonable is the answer to that.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do students tend to want to meet with their tutor more often as they approach test day, or
Yes. Yeah, almost
okay.
almost always. Just because uh as you get close to the test, it frequently is the case that you don't know what you don't know at that point because
Mhm.
you know most of it, and it's kind of hard to just sit and read a book and identify things you didn't already
I
know.
know what you mean.
So it's
Yeah.
nice to have somebody quiz you over things. So like for instance, the other day I made a unit analysis quiz and an amino acids quiz, and I just sent it out to a bunch of our students because I was like, this is a good way for you to check your knowledge on this stuff.
Pop
Um,
quiz. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then I made a key and I sent it out like a few hours later so that they could
That's awesome.
work it out. Yeah, and I do a decent amount of that stuff too that's not really mentioned anywhere on the website, just to add a little bit of extra value. Like I've actually recently started doing weekly webinars. I've done 3 of them so far, where I'll
Mhm.
just send out a Google form maybe a few days in advance and say who wants to do a webinar on maybe Saturday or Sunday this weekend, and here are a few topics that we might do. Vote on the ones you want to do, and then whichever one gets
Mhm.
the most votes, I'll usually do. So I'm going to be doing more of that over the course of the next year as well.
Are those technically also then uploaded only to those students' YouTube playlists, or how
We
can we
Yeah, we have
see those again?
we have a webinar playlist, so it'll be uploaded to
Oh,
the
well,
webinar
there.
playlist. Yeah, yeah, and that's going to be. I haven't decided if I want that to be entirely public facing all the time, just as a way to drive more traffic to our stuff, or if I want to put it behind something. Right now, I think it's public facing, but I don't think I have any. I think I have one video in it, so
Okay.
I'm just behind on editing. One of them I want to edit and put more images in because whenever I did it, I kind of got wrapped up in what I was talking about and got carried away and forgot to put
Sure.
stuff on the screen. So
Mhm.
it's taking me longer to edit it, and then we'll put the other
It
one up as soon
happens.
as I get that one done. But
But
yeah.
either way, no, even if it is public, all of your students in the program can see it, even if they did not come to the webinar.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely,
Okay.
definitely that one. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah, and they all have access to the playlist that it's in. I don't know. I'll see if I can find it really quick, and I just send it to you. That way you can see it. But
I know we
unfortunately,
went over at time, so I don't want to keep
oh no,
you
you're
at all.
worry about it. I have another meeting after this, but not until 2:30 my time. So what time zone are you? Oh, you're in a crazy time zone. You. All right.
I'm in Europe, so it's 9.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't have another meeting for like 35 more minutes, so I'm totally fine right now.
Oh, you're Central Time. You're not in Eastern Time.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
I see.
Or where are you normally?
I'm normally in New York State. I'm in Buffalo.
Oh, cool. Nice. I would love to go there. I've never been there, but I've heard that it snows like crazy there, and I really like snow.
Oh, it's great. I
Yeah.
was stuck at we have a huge blizzard at and over the last Christmas, and I was stuck at the hospital where I last worked, and
Oh no.
I was there for 60 hours. So
That's rough.
let me just say it will be a very great asset to my personal statement.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a long time to be stuck in a hospital.
I mean, we made the best out of the situation, so I'm happy of how it ended up, and the team that I was with were phenomenal amidst with
Awesome.
everything that happened. So
Awesome.
it was a devastating situation nonetheless.
So I just sent the link to this video or to this playlist to you This is
I
where
see. Yep.
the one webinar that I have published so far lives, and the rest of them will also be put in here as soon as they're done being edited.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So that way you just have access to it. You can check it out if you want. This one is it felt kind of weird. The first one did, because I used to teach the Kaplan Live Online course, and so I used to be very used to just talking to a camera and nobody paying attention, or nobody like saying anything back
Mm-hmm.
to me. But I've been doing one-on-one for so long now that it felt so weird to go into it and just monologuing to the camera. So uh they'll get better as they go through. The biochem one I did recently was a lot better than this one, but you'll see it whenever it goes up.
Mm-hmm. Well, this all
Did you
sounds fantastic.
did you get the text I sent you, by the way?
I did. I
Okay,
did.
just making sure that. And so that's also my personal cell phone number. So feel free to just
Okay.
text me at any point if you have other questions about this. But I'm also not trying to rush you out of here. Do you have any other questions right now?
No, everything that I have thought about has been answered. So, I mean, this
Okay,
all
perfect.
sounds wonderful, and I definitely want to move forward with it.
Okay, awesome. Ways to do that. So there, obviously you can just buy it on the website if you want, but on the website right now, I haven't figured out how to put in the payment plans on the website yet. So the only option on the website is just to pay up front. Most of our students end up paying for this over the course of like monthly payments throughout their prep process. And so I can, if you
Mhm.
do want to opt for that, you just have to let me know how many hours you want and how many months you want to spread it out over. And I can send you a custom link that reflects that. And it would just be a link you fill out once, and then it charges that same payment method monthly until all the payments are complete.
Auto. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
sounds good.
That way you just don't have to pay for it all up front, because it is a lot of money to have to pay like in one, in one
I
fell
understand.
swoop.
Yes. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. I'm coming back to the States tomorrow, so this will be a good
Oh, cool.
thing to look over next week. So then I can start right on the 4th after Labor Day weekend. Hopefully, that will be enough time to have everything go through, and then assignments, and at least have one consultant ready with the tutor.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we could get the like planning meeting done for you before that or after that, just whatever works best for your schedule.
Wonderful. Perfect. This
All
all
right.
sounds fabulous. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, yeah, no problem at all. And if you have any other questions throughout the day today or this weekend or whenever, just feel free to send me a text message. I'm always up really late working on this stuff, so don't worry about that.
Sounds good. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. And have a safe flight and enjoy the actually the reverse jet lag is I kind of like coming back from Europe back to the US, because then I'm
Oh, it's
awake on
easy.
normal time. Yeah.
I'm so flexible after a good night's sleep, since we always tend
Yeah.
to fly in the evening, and I sleep well until the next morning, and I'm all set. It's coming here that's the
Yeah,
problem. But
that's the rough one.
I've been I've been here for 2 months, so that's a different picture. So I
Oh
don't
wow,
know how
yeah.
long it will take me to readjust, but I'm hoping it won't be as bad as I think. But
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, who knows? Well, best of luck with that. And let me know if you have
Thank
any
you.
other
I
questions or
appreciate it.
anything. Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Will do. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to hear all of this. And I will look forward to talking to you pretty soon.
Likewise, I'll
All right,
definitely
thanks.
be letting you know.
All right, sounds great. I'll talk to you soon. Have
All
a good
right.
one.
Okay. You too. Take
All
care.
right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.